But I want to talk about another episode of this Teeth of Iron, as I'm with you here today. Okay, this happened within my dad's lifetime. Okay, so we're not talking ancient history here. So if you're 80 or above, this probably happened in your lifetime. So in 1941, Adolf Hitler invaded what we now call former Yugoslavia. He invaded them in combination with his Italian allies led by Mussolini. And they appointed a man called Ante Pavelić as the head of what he called the independent state of Croatia. And there is Hitler greeting Pavelić here, just after the conquest of Croatia. There's another picture of Ante Pavelić there. Now, who was this guy, Ante Pavelić? He was the leader of an organization known as the Stasi. He'd been indicted in France for the assassination of King Alexander I of Yugoslavia in 1934. Mussolini had refused to extradite Pavelić from Italy to face justice, so Pavelić had been condemned to death in absentia by the French courts. But when Hitler and Mussolini invaded Yugoslavia, Ante Pavelić was their useful man who they could install as a puppet ruler over Croatia. Now, Pavelić was a dyed-in-the-wool Catholic with an inveterate hatred for all non-Catholics. And Croatia is majority Catholic, Serbia was majority Orthodox, and there were also Muslims in modern-day Bosnia-Herzegovina. So this was a religious powder keg. So on 18th of May 1941, Pope Pius X gave a private audience to Pavelić and his Jesuit colleagues. And here's a picture of the Archbishop of Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, meeting Ante Pavelić in 1941. And Pope Pius X, the Roman Catholic Pope, he was an active supporter of the Nazis. And he issued a letter when Hitler came to power. He issued a letter instructing all of the Catholics of Germany to obey Hitler. And so Hitler's armies were mostly comprised of willing Catholics. And so in Zagreb, you have this alliance between the Roman Catholic Church and Ante Pavelić and his Ustasi regime. And the Ustasi, their primary goal, it seemed, was to massacre all non-Catholics. And they set about this with a brutal energy. The German army, who went in there with them, were appalled at the brutality. Even the Nazi SS, they wrote, the Ustasi have gone raging mad, killing Serbs, Jews, and Roma. Those are the gypsies in that part of the world. The Ustasi established concentration camps. They established torture of the most brutal kinds imaginable. They delighted in causing pain to their Orthodox or Muslim prisoners. Massacres, deportations, forced conversions were implemented, often led by the priests. Here's a report of one of those priests. Priests, invariably Franciscans, took a leading part in the massacres. Many went around routinely armed and performed their murderous acts with zeal. A Father Bozidar Bralov, known for the machine gun that was his constant companion, was accused of performing a dance around the bodies of 180 massacred Serbs at Alipasin Most. Most means bridge. Individual Franciscans killed, set fire to homes, sacked villages, and laid waste the Bosnian countryside at the head of Ustasi bands. In September of 41, an Italian reporter wrote of a Franciscan he had witnessed south of Banja Luka urging on a band of Ustasi with his crucifix. And so when you read the story of the Ustasi regime, it wasn't so much Hitler trying to kill the Jews, it was the Ustasi regime with the full cooperation of the papacy eliminating all non-Catholics in that part of the world. And it was genocide against non-Catholics, Serbian Orthodox and Bosnian Muslims, and anybody else they could get their hands on who was not a Catholic. And this was actively supported by the Catholic Church. It was known about by Pius X, who held regular conferences and face-to-face meetings with Ustasi leaders. This is all well-documented history. The cooperation between the papacy and the Ustasis was very, very open. In 1941, July 22nd, Pope Pius X gave an audience to a man called Eugen Kvartnik Dido and 100 members of the Croatian security police. That was the Ustasi version of the SS. Their concentration camps were so brutal that Dido's mother appealed to her son to stop it, and when he wouldn't, she committed suicide in despair at what she'd brought into the world. An Ustasi government minister declared, quote, "The Ustasi movement is based on religion. All our work rests on our loyalty to religion and the Catholic Church," end of quote. So at the end of World War II, when the Ustasi leaders were forced to flee at the liberation of Yugoslavia by the Soviets, it was discovered that almost 300,000 Serbs and Jews had been deported to Nazi death camps, 500,000 plus had been murdered within Croatia and Serbia itself, and 240,000 plus Orthodox Serbs had been forcibly converted to Catholicism. It was a painful chapter in the Balkans. And what happened in the 80s and the 90s? There's reasons for these things. And what happened to Ante Pavelić? Did he face justice? Well, the papacy, as the World War II was coming to an end, they established what they called the Pontifical Commission for Assistance. That was established to help Nazi war criminals evade justice at the end of World War II. They smuggled through the rat lines of monasteries and convents all across Europe, down through Italy, and then on ships down to South America. They smuggled hundreds of Nazi war criminals, knowing what they were doing, to safety in Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, and ultimately Brazil. The papacy was an active participant in the Holocaust and the horrors of Nazi Germany. But Ante Pavelić, he was helped out. The Pontifical Commission for Assistance smuggled him out of the country. He was held in convents, mostly in Austria and Italy, before he was smuggled to safety in Latin America. He lived in safety in Argentina until the death of President Perón, after which he moved to Paraguay. Then he moved to Spain, where he died of natural causes in 1959 within a Spanish monastery. He was protected to the end of his life, despite being one of the worst of the war criminals of World War II. So when the Bible talks about teeth of iron for this beast, the Bible knows what it's talking about. And this happened in my father's lifetime. And nobody's been held to account for these war crimes. And nowadays the papacy just moves on and people assume it's a force for good. But if you look at its history, and even in recent modern history, the papacy has been a force for evil in this world.